And joining us now to talk about all of this is Tom Clougherty, editorial director of the Center for Monetary and Financial Alternatives at the Cato Institute. Hey, Tom.
Good morning.
You know, first of all, are you surprised? And then I want to ask you, what is the future for Theresa May and the Conservative Party?
Well, first of all, I am surprised, very surprised, actually. Yesterday morning, I kind of did an average of the last round of all the polls. It looked like the Conservatives were leading by 7, 8 points. That one would assume would translate into a majority of around 50. Now, that, bear in mind, is significantly down, even in itself, from where the Conservatives were at the beginning of this campaign. Theresa May said she wouldn't call an early election, and then I think she was tempted by the fact that she was 16 points ahead in the polls. Her opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, was widely seen to be unelectable. And in the first week or so of the campaign, that Tory lead shot up to 24 points. Conservatives started talking about a majority of 100 or more. They started talking about winning seats in traditional Labour heartland areas where they'd never been. And in fact, even a few weeks ago, when the shine started to come off the Conservative campaign a bit, a lot of Conservative commentators in Britain were saying if Theresa May doesn't win a majority of at least 80, this is going to look bad for her. Well, my goodness, the tables have turned.
Right.
They would have been overjoyed by the time people were going to bed last night if they could have got any kind of majority at all.
There's so many implications for what we've seen transgress overnight. You know, ultimately, the question is, will she have to resign? I also just want to let our viewers know, and let you know, Tom, as well, if we do have to interrupt, we are awaiting comments from Theresa May from 10 Downing Street, so our apologies in advance of that. But again, what does this mean for the party?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think were it not for the Brexit negotiations, which are due to start in 9 or 10 days now, Theresa May would be toast. You know, she would be over. Conservatives in Britain are not sentimental about their leaders. Even Margaret Thatcher, who was kind of an icon as well as an incredibly successful Prime Minister, once she became an electoral liability, the Conservatives got rid of her like that. There would be no holding back on Theresa May were it not for the fact that we're about to enter into those negotiations, and it may therefore be very difficult for the Conservatives to find a new leader in time. I still think that's a significant possibility. I suspect Theresa May is going to try and stay on. We may not see any moves against her immediately, but I think if parliamentary Conservatives were able to coalesce around a single replacement candidate, therefore avoiding the need for a drawn-out leadership contest, it may be that the so-called men in grey suits would come to her and ask her to step aside. Well, it remains to be seen whether that's going to happen, but this is a huge blow to her personal authority, because you've got to bear in mind...
We're looking at pictures of 10 Downing Street, where we do expect Theresa May to come out any minute and speak. Can you comment on the risk that she took? She had a slim but a stable majority, her party did, in Parliament, and then she calls for this snap election 3 years early, and this has been called, as far as the markets are concerned, the worst possible outcome. Would you agree?
Yeah. I don't think this is the worst possible outcome. I think the worst possible outcome for anyone who cares about the economy would have been a Labour government, frankly. And I say that not in a particularly partisan way. There are past Labour governments who've done a fine job. But Jeremy Corbyn in particular is a left-wing extremist. He would have raised the UK tax burden to its highest level in peacetime ever. He had huge new spending commitments. In fact, his programme amounted to basically giving anybody anything they asked for without really concerning himself about how it was going to be paid for. Admittedly, he came up with some figures that all the money was going to come from taxing the rich and corporations and maybe some tax on wealth. I think those of us who understand the way taxes work and the way revenues work know that there was no way he was going to bring in that kind of money with the taxes he was talking about. So he would have had to raise taxes on the vast swathe of the British population. More likely, actually, the deficit would have just spiraled upwards and upwards and upwards, and the UK's borrowing costs would have started to spike, and that could have had huge knock-on effects through the economy. So I think that disaster, frankly, has been averted, but this is not a happy situation, certainly.
It certainly is not. Tom, thank you for your time.